Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psych Reg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Bernie Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. So Richard, right about a month ago, we did a podcast called Never Say You're Sorry.
Right.
And we were talking about the challenge that some people have with apologizing.
That's right. There are some people who find it very, very difficult to utter an apology.
Right.
They just don't do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we recently found an article that looks at the other side,
Right.
and it's called When You Can't Forgive.
Right. I found this absolutely fascinating because I thought, what do you mean can't forgive? You know,
Right.
it's like, it's a choice you make, right?
Right.
Then I started reading this article.
Yeah. It's really interesting. It's written by Tina Gilbertson, a licensed counselor.
Professional counselor.
And she writes about it in a way that I've never really considered it before. We think about, we consider forgiveness a choice.
Right,
You
yeah.
need to choose to forgive.
Yeah, people come into the office and they'll say, well, I have to forgive him or I have to forgive her. It's this cognitive decision, this
Right.
choice that they're
Right.
making, right? And that's how it's typically presented.
Right. Well, Tina Gilbertson presents it in this article that forgiveness isn't really a choice; it's an emotion.
Right. And I'd never thought about that before.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I never thought of forgiveness as an emotion.
Right.
But she says forgiveness is an emotion, and we don't choose our emotions.
Right.
We don't choose our emotions. I just never thought of forgiveness as an emotion.
Right.
But it sort of makes sense when you follow what she's saying in this article.
Exactly. So one of the things she talks about is that for us to be able to forgive,
Right.
there certain conditions have to be met.
Right.
And if we don't meet those, if those conditions aren't met, forgiveness is, first of all, forgiveness is very, very difficult.
Right.
And you may not achieve it, again, because it's an emotion. And of course, with certain conditions, certain emotions are easier to elicit.
That's right. Because we begin by saying, I think what the piece that I'm trying to articulate here is that we feel guilty if we don't forgive.
Right.
Okay. And she has a wonderful line at the beginning of the article about drinking poison. Refusing to forgive is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And she said the problem with this is it blames the victim. In other words, you've been wronged.
Right.
Okay. But if you don't forgive somebody, then it's you have the problem.
Right.
And she's saying, wait a minute, that's blaming the victim.
Right. And it's a problem that we apply to ourselves, but also a problem that others apply to us.
That's right.
That's right. Haven't you forgiven him yet? I mean, what's wrong with you?
Why can't you forgive and forget?
Right.
Well,
Right.
it could be because it's not a choice that I'm making. Okay. But then she goes on to say, but let's think about this for a moment. There are 3 conditions that have to be met in order for me to forgive.
Right.
So I don't just have blanket forgiveness.
Right.
And I think that's what we forget is that, yes, I'd like to forgive and I'd like to forget, but there are 3 conditions that need to be met in order for me to do that.
Right.
And they are?
The first condition is that there needs to be a good apology.
Right.
Now, and that goes back to that month ago podcast that we did on saying you're sorry. The apology has to be good, it has to be sincere, and it has to be felt not just by the person who's issuing the apology, but the person that's receiving the apology.
That's right. You can issue as many apologies as you want, but if the other person isn't hearing it, or more importantly, if the other person isn't feeling it,
Right.
It's not an apology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has to begin with a good apology. The second condition is that there has to be a good outcome. So not just a good apology, but then the next things that happen have to be generally positive.
Right. You can't just apologize and walk away.
Right.
That's what teenagers tend to do. That
Yeah.
they apologize under duress, or they apologize because
somebody tells them to.
because they've been told to, and then they walk away and nothing has really changed.
Right.
And that's why they keep doing the same thing over and over
Right.
again. So there has to be some good outcome.
Right.
For both people.
Right. So the idea of saying, I'm sorry that you got upset when I did this, that's not a very good apology, and it's not going to lead to a very good outcome.
And I think this is especially true with school children, young school children, where we say, now you have to apologize to him, okay? And so they apologize and walk away. But now we have something called restorative justice.
Right.
Because maybe what we need to have is some restitution,
Right.
not punishment, but to restore the condition to what it was before we offended somebody.
Right.
Okay. So just apologizing may not be sufficient. You may have to fix what you broke.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, the third condition is the one, of course, that is really the crux of the matter, and that is that there has to be an end to the offending behavior.
Right.
You can't hit somebody, say, "Oh, I'm sorry that I hit you," and then hit them again.
Right.
And then apologize and expect them to be able to accept and move forward.
I had a Jewish friend who grew up in a Catholic section of Queens. So she was Jewish, but she grew up in a Catholic section.
Okay.
And she was amused by the concept of confession, because she said, my Catholic friends would confess these, what they called sins, but she said, then they would go out and commit them next week.
Right.
And then go back in the next Saturday and confess them again.
Right.
And she said, shouldn't there be some intention of not offending again?
I thought that was the benefit of
You could keep
confession, is like you could, as long as you made it there by the end of the week, you were okay. I did not grow up Catholic, so
He obviously didn't grow up
I
Catholic.
didn't. I don't know.
But it's a concept, and she was absolutely right.
Yeah.
And she was saying, well, wait a minute, if you don't have some commitment to change, if you don't have some commitment not to keep making the same mistake again, there seems to be something wrong with that. And I think that's what she's getting at with number 3.
Right.
Is that there has to be some commitment, at least.
Right.
To end the offending behavior.
Right.
If you're in a marriage relationship, for example, and your partner keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again, keeps apologizing but keeps doing it over and over again, the apology starts to lose its value.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so all three of these things, the good apology, the good outcome, and the end to the offending behavior, all of them really are closely tied with one another.
Right.
I mean, you can't have a good apology but continue to do the behavior.
Right.
I mean, there has to be some consistency across all three of these conditions.
So if you're raising young children, don't ask them just to apologize in an obligatory way.
Right.
If you're a teenager, make your apology sincere. Okay, you're old enough to make your apology. Don't just apologize and walk away as though you've done your duty. Learn how to apologize and mean it, whether it's to your parents or to your friends or your teachers.
Yeah.
So lots of good stuff in here.
And one of the things she ends with is the idea that, of course, we all generally want to forgive. We all want to attain that level of forgiveness so that we can be resolved.
Because it lightens our load.
Right.
I want to get rid of this guilt,
Right.
and I want to get rid of the hurt feelings that I've caused. But certain conditions need to be met.
Right. And so she advises, of course, that if you're having a difficult time forgiving someone of something, to look back at these 3 conditions and figure out which one it is which of those 3
That's right.
conditions are not being met, and to forgive yourself for having difficulty forgiving.
That's right. So if forgiving others or having others forgive you, go to this little article here and put these 3 things. Remember these 3 things. Real important stuff here.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll put
simple
a link
but
to
important.
it in the show notes,
Yeah.
so it's there for you.
Go to the show notes.
All right. Well, that's it for today.
That's all.
That's it. So, have a great day, everybody.
Right.
Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.